Hello, I'm John Carrington, and welcome to Keepers of the Flame. This is Keepers of the Flame, where we bring light into a dark world. And my special guest today is a very special friend of mine, known him for years, Jean-Albert RENAUD. And his name has an acronym, JAR, J-A-R. And JAR, talk about your name.
That's a very interesting topic. This is an interview, and I love taking the time to sit down and meet people and talk to people about, like, the flame, about life, the stories. All of our lives are stories. And but in English, my name is pronounced Jean-Albert RENAUD. In French, is Jean-Albert RENAUD. So every time we would go to do interviews like this, we spend the first 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, having a conversation about my name. So my manager said, well, you know something? Jar is interesting. And that's Cher, and you got Madonna, you got Seal. Let's just shorten your name. And it became just Jar. Okay. So, and I like it, you know, as long as you don't call me Jarhead. I'm a dog face. I'm Army.
I love it. And of course, I first crossed paths with your name when you were Renault and the Junction.
Hey!
Talk about that, sir.
Well, you know, John, you're a Baltimore boy like me.
I'm from Baltimore.
So, you know, and one of the really nice things about, as much as our careers have taken it international and meeting so many different people, every time someone asks me where I'm from, I say, I'm from Baltimore. They say, Baltimore? That crime city? and I went, what? What do you mean crime city? And when they explained to me, they said every time we see a show from Baltimore City, it's Homicide, it's The Wire, it's The Corner, and he says, it doesn't show your city off very well. I says, Baltimore is an incredible city, a beautiful city. And in the interviews and work like we have now, one of the nice things about Baltimore is I was asked for the show to write something about Baltimore. And so I wrote a piece called Baltimore. And I'm trying to get, when I look around and you know, we both travel and we go to many different places, but everyone's always bragging about their city. And I came up in Baltimore. You know, I live out in the suburbs now, but I'm proud the city has been good to me, really good to me. And I've tried to be good to it.
Amen. Well, you've always translated back to us as being a positive outgrowth of that urban life. But you did transition. It's kind of a little tricky. You are now an experienced horseman, and you own a farm, and you own horses. Talk about that transition from Baltimore City guy to being a horseman.
Well, like I was referring to the classification in a lot of my travel about our home. So I wrote that piece, Baltimore, but that piece about Baltimore was when Baltimore was a whole different city. Yeah. I mean, I'm turning 84, so you can imagine what it was like when I was in Baltimore City.
Oh, you look good, man, I tell you. I'm
telling you, that stuff you put frog legs in, formaldehyde, works. I got some to sell, you know. I started realizing that the city had changed so much, and I had, in my international travel, of being an international model, and I was very successful with that in the United States and Europe, and parts of the Middle East, that the city had changed so much. The area I moved in, my family was the second African-American family that integrated Northwest Baltimore. I was in the first 13 as a child there to integrate the schools of Baltimore City and Maryland. I was in the first 13. So when I looked around and I realized that the city had changed so much, the area was Warbrick Junction. That's where the name Junction comes from, getting back to what we were saying about Renaud and the Junction. So we started off with a group name called Groove on Us. So it's Renaud plus Groove on Us. Then it was, the group shortened and changed up because of the music that we were starting to get into, because I started off being a solo act like a Johnny Mathis. Then I went on to being oh my goodness, jazz, Johnny Mathis type stuff. Then to put the group together, after that, with the group being so big, and so we downsized to RENAUD plus 4, then RENAUD plus 3. And then I did some touring modeling and stuff again, and I was intermediately in the middle of all of that, keeping the skills my great-grandfather had given me to at 3 years old to put me on a horse. And it was addictive. I mean, out of all the things that rock and roll stars that leave here from drugs and gunshots and all the stuff that happens with them, the minute he put me on that horse, I was 3 years old. So that was back to the flame, keep up the flame. That was the beginning of my story and my grandparents' storytelling. Because, you know, we had radio.
That's right.
But we didn't have television, so my grandparents, which are part of my heritage, is Native American, and my dad was Blackfoot, African American, French. This is where the name comes from. My mother was African American, Cherokee, and Irish. So it's a Heinz 57. You know, so I'm all mixed up. But it's been cool because, you know, when we look at us all around the world, everybody's trying to say I'm this and I'm this and I'm better and I'm better, but we're all nuts. There's no pure anything left on Mother Earth. So breeding, that's the process of breeding, animal and human.
Okay.
And when I realized that the city had changed so much, because there was nobody, you know, black living in the area but us. We went from moving to where Mandalman, the shopping center was, and I used to run around them and climb all over when they were building that. And that was no Don McCabe company, that was all woods. Then we moved up again, moved up to Windsor Hills and Chelsea Terrace. And it was so beautiful and nice up there. But there was a station up there called the Junction. And that's where the number 15 trolley used to come up, pick you up, and take you downtown. Not a bus, that 15 trolley. I'll never forget it, I loved it. And that's where I got my first job, because at 7 years old I started working. Afro-American newspaper.
All right.
Signing shoes down at the Greyhound bus station and Trailways. And when I hear Sammy Davis' story a lot, I simply understand that that's what I was doing. I was shining shoes and I was perfecting my, how do you say, communication skills.
That's right.
To communicate with my audience, which wasn't an audience that got to be like 20,000 people at one point with me on stage. And I'm shining shoes and I'm doing my little doo-wop thing and singing my little stuff. And I could sing even when I was young. And they were admiring me, and I would tell my little story. I'm down here shining shoes because I'm trying to make some money to go to summer camp. Can you help me? So when they heard a little kid down there shining shoes and singing, saying, I'm trying to make money to go to summer camp, the tips were amazing.
All right.
So I learned to do that a little bit more. Then I perfected it up with getting on stage and entertaining my audience. Then I went to school for acting, dancing, fashion model. My mother helped me with that because my mother was the first black DJ for radio here in this area. WEB, she was WEB, Joy Webb. And then she got into modeling. And there was really no space, you know, for people of color to model. They just simply weren't putting them in the ads. So it's called opportunity. You know, a lady named Lorraine Walters came to Baltimore, and she put the first academy here for black women. Because guys, modeling, that's like guys, ballet. I took 13 years of ballet because of ballet. So they had a whole different way of looking at why would you do that. But my mom, to the modeling academy, wound up, I don't know if in Baltimore people will remember American Beer. It's one of the largest beer companies.
That's right.
Like National Bow, you know. And the person that represented the beer was an Indian princess.
Ham's
Native American.
Ham's beer.
Well, Ham was there, but this was American.
American.
And she became the princess. They put her an Indian outfit on, and she was gorgeous, and she played the part, which is funny because one of her first big ads was selling alcohol. And one of my first big ads was, I don't know if the people remember, sangria came to America.
That's right, yeah.
And there were a lot of wines, but from the Spanish market, no one had heard of sangria. So it was called Yargo. And the mascot, or the image for Yargo, was the bullfighter with the cape. And these tight little leotard pants and this little hat and stuff. And the guy saw me on stage at the Shining Claire downtown. And he says, do you model? I said, I've done a little bit. He says, we're bringing a wine to the United States called Yargo Sangria. He said, we think that you would fit into the outfit we've already had made, which is the bullfighter outfit. Wow. Well, I was always wearing tight stuff on stage anyway. I was Prince before Prince, and more risque than Prince. And so they said, we would like to have you come over and put on the outfit. And I went over and put the outfit on, and it fit like someone painted it on. And I started touring most of the East Coast. They backed me in shows and concerts. I got posters that I can, I wish I had bought one here today. But what it did is, music and all made it so that I was able, before I turned 18, because when I turned 18, I went into the military. And I went into the military because things were great, but still for a black woman in America, no matter if she was a DJ or whatever, the pay wasn't that good. The pay for women was different than the pay for men. And the opportunities were different. But when this happened, I found myself being exposed in so many different clubs because of the booze that I was representing that broke down those barriers. It's like Sinatra says, if Sammy Davis Jr., if he can play Vegas, he can stay in the hotels in Vegas. And if he can't, then we are not going to play. That's right. So you're starting to look at all of that history that got me through that. I started to realize every time I went out and played these clubs, these jazz clubs and stuff, I was young, but there was an awful lot of drugs. And I mean, not the best drugs. And then we started to lose people. Overdoses. My family, most of my family had a problem with because of what was going on in America. They drank. That was, instead of cocaine or heroin, like a lot of people try to handle stress and out of here before you know it, gone too soon but not forgotten. And that little thing my great-grandfather did, this is back to storytelling, and told me the stories of how they came out of nothing and got some land. And then the families got lost. My father's side of the family, I think, was 14. My mother's side was 12. And he started explaining that the families were so large because of the labor needed for the amount of land they'd gotten working for, really, I could say, the Caucasians that owned the country, basically. And I found myself, when I was able to go, because we didn't have cars, we had buggies. My great-grandfather walked behind with 2 mules and sometimes a horse at 80-some years old. Still with his sons and all working the land. And that was the first thing that put them into having the money to feed the family. But because of the farming, like you see around in Maryland, so they have the little roadside stores where they sell the corn and they do all that. Well, that was a part of something my great-grandfather and all them did until they were able to build a store and help the African-American neighborhood. Food affordability. And, but when I got on the horse, I remember my great-grandfather behind the horses in the plow. And he had a song, he had a message that he had trained those horses to listen to. So when you went down the field, to keep the roads even, if he wanted the horse to go left or the horse to go right, there was a thing that he did, and I can't remember exactly what it was, like he and he would go left. Go, and you would go right. And he would say something at the end of the field for the horse to turn around and not mess up what it was. He would say something else, and they would turn around and come up the other side. And all day long, I'm sitting there, he put this straw hat on me, and I'm only 3 years old, and then I did more as I went home every summer, because my family, my mother and father moved out of Virginia. And I'm up there thinking like I'm Christopher Columbus. I'm discovering, look at what I'm discovering, look at this. But more importantly, the communication from an old man with a species that is not human, called the horse. And they had a marriage. That was such a beautiful thing to see. And when I got good enough on it, I would go out there and I would jump up on this little chair and jump up and get on the horse, and I would ride with no bridle, no nothing, with a mane. Well, that's years and years since I got good. So when I got into rock and roll and started hanging out with all these people doing drugs all the time and chasing nothing but sex, not that I didn't think any of that was bad. Don't let me be a hypocrite here. Coming up, making more money than I ever could have made, and anybody in my family could have made. I could, wow! I can go out here, I can play. I don't have to say, can I meet the mother and father to get the girl? I don't have to, if I want to drink, anything I wanted to do. So it was a part of what we all do once we get to a certain age to get out of the structure of mom and dad. Because mom and dad is the first Congress, Senate, representative, president of who you are at that time. I went back to riding, and because it's kind of like becoming depressed, drinking too much, too many drugs. Also, I guess, too much sex, if you could say it's too much sex. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to say, well, most of it was great.
That's another show.
That's another show. I transitioned into the equestrian world. Well, like in the music world, for people of color, the opportunities to really make the high-end money, to play Vegas, to be in, do international travel as an artist. You saw it happen with athletes, which is why so many of our athletes went overseas and came back. But when I felt myself, I was in LA and doing some work out there, but I felt myself losing myself. And so every time I felt that way, instead of doing drugs excessively and going out and trying to have my whole life around just pleasure, I started to really ride a lot more. So every time I felt depressed or down, when I got a break, I'd go to someone's place and run a horse. And the more and more I did that, I realized because I rode so well, and most of the time when I went to ride someone else's horses, I knew more about the horses than they did. Because I realized that they had money and they had horses, but it was black people who was cleaning the stalls, who was taking care of the horses, from thoroughbreds on down. And when they put me on a horse and they saw me ride, they said, "Whoa, where did you learn to ride?" So it was that history and the storytelling my grandfather told me about horsemanship and all these things that made me use that as a vehicle to get my life back together. Then I bought a horse. Then I got married. Because I was modeling internationally, I married a girl from Sweden. So my son, who you know, Christian, is half Swedish. And with all the stuff that was already in my family, in what's going on in the breeding world, I have a son. And the area that I was living had transitioned into becoming more black than white. With a son that looked more white than black. He was getting beat up in school. Oh yeah, our house was starting to get broken in, which had never happened before. Breaking in my cars. And I started to really realize, I said, if I want to raise my son, I've got to put him in an area that at least is close to being some sort of equilibrium of how many people there are Asian or how many people there. So he has an international upbringing. And I bought a horse farm moved out of Baltimore and moved up on the Maryland, Pennsylvania line into the woods where I was going to my grandparents' house every summer, even though we were living in Baltimore. So basically, I was raised in Baltimore. When I moved up to Baltimore, I had an album out. My name was all over the place and all over television and stuff. So everyone was telling me, said, you do not want to move where you plan on moving. It's not too cool up there. And I said, why? So they started telling me again, Keepers of the Flame, stories about why I didn't want to move up to northwest Baltimore, 3 miles from PA. And the first thing they told me, they says, well, the Ku Klux Klan Grand Master is in a place called Gamba, and that's about 20 minutes from your door. And I went, really? But when I moved up there and I started to go into some of the little stores and meet people who had horses, because it was rare, they hadn't seen anybody like me come up there. And they didn't know what I was. I had long hair. Like Indian, I was looking more Native American than African American. And then I started riding with them, and they did the same thing. They said, where did you learn to ride? And I said, from my grandfather. And I said, our family has a history with horses. And so I started to talk about my history about horses and tell them when I grew up, my father bought land in New Mexico. So I went out to New Mexico where the powwows and got introduced through my dad more and more to the Native American heritage of my bloodline. And they taught me more things about riding. And this journey took me around the world, from nowhere to everywhere, through the love for the horse. And I wasn't the Roy Rogers who was the riding cowboy or the Gene Autry. People say, whoever heard of a singing black cowboy? I said, well, in person. So I found myself all over the world with horses. The music came into be rap, which I had never done. Now, rap really is not music when it started. It's poetic poetry to a rhythm. It's storytelling. Back to the stories. So music is a story anyway. Because every breath you take is a part of your story. You are a story. Every breath you're taking, you're writing your story. And the great thing about it is that if you're a good storyteller, well, you know how to tell jokes. It's getting attention. Right. And I found that my talent in music and my talent on horses, but I also knew how to be funny. And I started this journey for kids through the horse. Teaching 3 things to try and take the kids out of the city where I had just moved out of, which was breaking into houses, stealing cars and stuff. How do I help these kids who are coming out of juvenile services and stuff like this to look at their lives a little bit differently? And I did it through the horse. And I says, number 1, most kids, when they walk over, you think they're afraid of a dog. When a little kid is like this and it walks over a horse and it's looking up like that, and the first question every time the kid said to me, does it bite? Does it bite? I said, it's got teeth. Yeah. And I said, but no. I said, I'm going to try to teach you the first lesson of what I'm doing here with Project Arrowhead, which we talked about. And trust. And as a kid, first times in school, the reason why I didn't do well in school is because I didn't trust or like the teacher. The teacher did not work on the law of attraction. What could she do or say that made me go, oh, really? And became interested in the conversation of the story. So I said, the next thing is effort. If you trust me enough to listen to me, and I'm teaching you, so that you can go from being afraid of this, and I'll have you up on this horse riding it like I did at 3. I says, once I teach you something, I'm going to ask you to do what I taught you. And the kids would go, oh, really? You want me to hold that? You want me to lift his leg up and all that? I said, yeah, but we're going to do it slowly. Right. And I won that by doing trust, effort, and the greatest lesson I've had to teach myself, my musicians, everybody I've been around with, is patience. Trust, effort, and patience accomplishes your goals. If you have a story in your head that you want to be, to tell by people being able to look at your story because they get to look at you. it's the sharing of stories, John, that made you and I friends.
Oh my goodness.
And all the stuff I've been able to do with the many people I have been in this business with. And
all the things you've done, what has been the highlight?
the highlight is to realize two things. In trying to achieve something to afford to be able to live. Food, housing. Without that, life's miserable for all of us. And we're seeing that on how many people are on our streets around the country and around the world going nowhere. So, my horsemanship, where in Maryland first, this time I tried to be a part of the Maryland Horse Society, they dissed me. Oh yeah. Because they hadn't had any black people other than the stable boys in the stall coming into the high end of the thoroughbred horse racing industry or the Arabian horse racing industry, because there was only a few to none that had reached that level. So when I kept moving, then from stage, people would come and interview me because of my show, and they would do an interview like this and ask me, what do I do? Where do you live? What do you like? And I would always go to nature and the horse. So the two things that I'm very proud of, it's kind of hard to say, John, because when you're in show business, you meet so many other celebrities that you never thought you would meet. And you get invited into things because of your skills and your talent. They don't really know who you are, but they're inviting you in because of what you've accomplished as an artist. And
well, what piece of advice can you leave our viewers with?
Don't ever stop dreaming. Don't ever stop dreaming. Because you never know where on the corner that you may meet that person that can make that dream come true. But you've got to have a goal. And you've got to have that dream. Something to pursue. Something to be. Something to want to be, where in that being, you may be able to help other people, from children to adults, make the world a little better place than it was while we were here.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Health is a state of body. Wellness is a state of mind. Jean Albert Renaud, I want to thank you for giving us a healthy message and keeping us on the track to be well.
Well, I want to thank Baltimore. This is my town. I don't care what anybody thinks about it or whatever. This is my town. I wrote that piece about Baltimore. And I'm doing a book right now. My first book is coming out. They did a documentary on me. It won 7 film festivals. And now there's a book coming out. And a lot of that film, and a lot of that book is about Baltimore. And the people I love who have loved me. And we have shared time together to share our stories. So do something to share your story. But make sure your story is a good story, a healing story, a story of support to make us all look at each other that we are all God's children. All of us. And if we stop fighting about who God loves the most and just do the one thing that the book says in all the things that I've looked at in the Bible and even in the Quran and other things, do unto me and mine the way we want you to do unto you and yours.
All right. Well, this is John Carrington, and this is Jean Albert Renaud, Jar. And he's a keeper of the flame, a person who loves to do what makes light shine in a dark world. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Tune in again for another episode of Keepers of the Flame.
Thank you.
Thank you.